In the last segment, we were discussing with Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey about his efforts to protect minors from pornographic websites. And as I alluded to on the way out of that conversation, that's just the tip of the iceberg of the threats and the dangers that children are facing online. And I say children, I mean, we're talking about 12, 13, 14-year-old kids. Violence and gore are designed to desensitize children, and in some cases, according to the experts, intentionally radicalize them. We're seeing children being radicalized in a matter of months online. And all of these are becoming increasingly, all these sites are becoming increasingly accessible and becoming progressively more graphic and extreme. Now, you know, you say, well, I've not seen it. Well, yeah, you're probably not looking for it. It's there. How pervasive is it? And how pervasive is the threat? How serious is the threat? What warning signs should parents be looking for, and what can be done? Well, here now to discuss this, Stella Morabito, a senior contributor at the Federalist and the author of The Weaponization of Loneliness, How Tyrants Stoke Our Fear of Isolation to Silence, Divide, and Conquer. She also previously served in the Central Intelligence Agency as an analyst with a focus on propaganda and media analysis. Stella, welcome to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Tony.
So my interest was piqued earlier in this week. I was reading an Associated Press story about a French boy who was radicalized on the internet into becoming an Islamic extremist. Now, years ago, I worked in the field of anti-terrorism, long before the internet was an issue. It was the old kind of terrorism. But we're seeing this used as a very effective tool of jihadists and others. What do we know about how kids are being radicalized through porn, violence that's readily accessible on the internet?
Well, what I know basically is that, based on my book and my thesis about the weaponization of loneliness, is that children in particular are highly suggestible, but even more so if they don't have strong bonds of family, religious faith, and good friendships, and so often these the internet and all of these really awful influences are going to be have more of an effect on them, and as you said in your intro, desensitize them to a lot of this gore, violence, pornography. So that they kind of they can end up acting out in real life. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that I don't believe they have strong enough real life relationships that are healthy and strong. And so, I think we can go right back to, the issue of family breakdown and what's been happening in the schools that don't really allow children to develop the ability to think independently, and especially that fear, that threat of being ostracized has a huge effect on how susceptible they are to other influences, that serve as like cheap and harmful substitutes for true companionship.
So it's kind of an alternative community that they're seeking online. I mean, and part of this comes through the games that are online too. They're creating these communities, and some of these games are extremely violent.
Very addictive too. I mean, that's another another point. But the loneliness epidemic, as you I'm sure know, is off the charts. And this lack of real-life social connection makes them a whole lot more susceptible to these really bad influences. So I think what needs to be done is to develop stronger relationships, and as your organization, Family Research Council, has worked so hard and so well to do, build more of an awareness of the importance of real life relationships to avoid that threat, that I talk about in my book of the weaponization of loneliness. I mean, their sense of loneliness is being weaponized by these bad influencers.
Yeah, it's not just happening, it's intentional. We've seen this before, testimony before Congress with the online, social media platforms that are constructing their algorithms to feed upon these vulnerabilities within these children. But I want to go to what you were talking about here, the preventative aspect of this. I'm concerned. In fact, I was having this conversation just yesterday with an educator about how in our schools today, you don't have textbooks, you have computers, and you're reading everything online. And so kids, it's just natural to be online, and before you know it, you're someplace where you shouldn't be. What are the symptoms? What are the things that parents should be looking for that should cause concern? And then we'll talk about some preventative steps.
Right. Well, I think an obsession with social media, number one, it can be, social media can actually be good in certain circumstances, to connect, like we use the telephone. I mean, communications technologies keep people connected, but the overuse and obsession with social media, when it becomes so addictive that it takes the place of real life interactions, that's really dangerous. And parents who are connected and concerned will be able to detect this sort of, detachment, I think, is a way of putting it in their children. And, what's really crazy is that you'll see a bunch of kids together, where they're physically together, but every single one of them on their little smartphone and even texting one another. When they could just talk to them standing right next to them.
I've seen that in airports. I sometimes get amused at it, where you'll have families and they're communicating with each other. They're all on different devices, and they'll sometimes you'll see them turn and look at the other one after they text them something. It's just, we've become so focused on technology that I think we're almost losing the ability to have this interpersonal relationships, which were created. I mean, that's the way God created us, to have that type of interaction. What are some of the other behavioral changes that take place that parents should be looking for to say, hey, wait a minute, we've crossed a line here?
Well, detachment, number one. Behaviorally, I think, you would see them maybe hanging out with, kids who aren't connected, who might draw them into cult-like situation, gang-like situation. It might not be noticeable at first, but, these other influences, or also, as you said earlier, it's intentional. If you look at things like certain magazines, for example, that might be hard magazines, but mostly online, like, I don't know how familiar your listeners, viewers are with a magazine called Teen Vogue, which is aimed primarily at teenage girls, but it is highly politicized and highly sexualized. And, if they pick up a copy of that, I mean, your antenna should really go up. I mean, if you see them looking at that kind of content, and they even tell you who to vote for. And if a child gets really obsessed with a particular celebrity who basically will tell them how to act or how to vote, or, all of those things, to the point that they can't really think on their own, that they are so, it's easy for a child to become, I don't know, just obsessed, or obsessed maybe is not the right word, but charmed by a celebrity. But all of that relates to, I believe, how they feel they are being viewed by others. That is number one. Caring so much about what your peers think is natural to a certain extent. I mean, I think that as human beings, we are all so hardwired for companionship, for connection. I mean, the epigraph for my entire book, The Weaponization of Loneliness, is it is not good for man to be alone, and you know that's true in every aspect of our being, and we need strong relationships, a relationship with God, a relationship with family, relationship with friends, companions, in healthy relationships, so that we can interact in healthy and strong and effective ways. And if your child is falling away from that path, that gives us inner strength. I mean, that's why tyrants have always targeted traditional religion, family, and even friendship. It is targeted because isolation and creating isolation is absolutely essential for tyranny and controlling what people think and what they do and what they say. So anyway, getting back to...
Let's talk a little bit then about some of the preventative steps that parents can see even before they might see these warning signs. I mean, first off, parents need to be aware that this is out there. And it's not going to happen to my kid. This AP article just talks about how these kids who ended up in court because they were radicalized and they plotted to engage in some cases, mass murder, arrested in court, and their parents said, I had no idea. So it's there, and it can happen, especially for those that are isolated and really withdrawn. So let's talk a little bit about parents taking preventative steps. First off, something that's been lost in our culture is actually sitting down over a meal and having a meal together and listening to your children. I mean, I know it might not be possible every night, but you ought to focus on at least a couple nights a week where you're sitting around the table listening to what your kids are saying, asking them questions about what they're seeing and experiencing. That'll give you some insight, will it not?
Absolutely. I mean, and to talk to them about things that are of true interest to them that are not related to social media or the internet. I mean, a child might have a strong interest in music or sports or something, and to kind of develop a healthy interest in things that, hobbies and things like that are, healthier and allow a child a better path to strong development. And of course, faith and, to emphasize that, but also to make sure if there's a way through church or through other family or friends, to kind of stimulate that healthy social environment for a child.
Right.
I mean, if your child is in a public school where they're being propagandized half the day, it's pretty hard, to keep track. But if you know who they're talking to and what they're doing, and allow them, give them other outlets that are fun and will build on that strong strong social connections that are healthy and a strong sense of identity. I think what's happened through the media and academics is they've gotten away from that very natural development of individuation.
And that connectedness that we talked about. Stella, we're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us. Thanks so much. Appreciate your insights on this.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Tony.